health care for seniors and cut health care for Americans actually of all ages. Here's a Republican congressman discussing the related programs of Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid.
We're going to have some hard decisions. We got to bring the Democrats in and talk about Social Security, Medicaid, Medicare. There's hundreds of billions of dollars to be saved, and we know how to do it. We just have to have the stomach to actually take those challenges on.
There you heard. Cutting hundreds of billions from those programs would cost people a lot more than even the admitted severity and hardship of those high prices that we've heard about over the last few years. Seniors get over $1,500, $2,000 plus sometimes in Social Security monthly, and they've all paid into that for decades. So slashing billions will hit them. Republicans won the House by just about 5 seats or so. Trump won by 1.5 points, a narrow margin that would not seem to be a wide mandate for, say, just completely gutting the safety net. And while we're talking mandates, the mandate for supporting these programs is higher than the support for Trump last month or for other politicians like Kamala Harris. Indeed, responding to this economy election by cutting programs that help people through a tough economy would seem like a contradiction. And even Republicans, before they get going, before they even take charge next month, are already concerned about the political downside of these kind of cuts, given that 70 million Americans are under these programs. So that's part of the Republican plan. And what would the Republicans do if they actually did cut these billions out of the budget? Well, they're very clear on that. They would move them from these working class seniors to the ultra wealthy, with more tax cuts modeled on Trump's first-term tax cuts, which have sometimes so distorted the tax code that working-class Americans pay higher rates than the billionaires, or the billionaires pay less than the working class. However you say it, that's pretty wild. Now, there are billionaires who back both parties. That's just a public fact. So the idea here is not that any billionaire involvement in politics is automatically bad. But it's worth noting that Democrats, while they've struggled with criticism that they're not doing enough for labor or the working class, we are living through a real-world test of this. Over the past 4 years, the Biden-Harris administration, these billionaires who backed Democrats didn't get a new big tax break. And the safety net programs I just mentioned were not slashed these past 4 years. So the economic contrast is clear, even if taxes and the annual rates people are paying are not always as top of mind as the price of eggs. Now, Trump may mislead about his margin. House Republicans see no upside, however, though, in overselling or raising expectations about their narrow margin because they have a narrow control over the House, which is familiar for them. They started this current Congress with the infighting and a very narrow vote margin, which led to the standoffs like you see here. Matt Gaetz and Kevin McCarthy fighting over those many, many rounds of voting. Those clashes and mutinies echo to this day because while some of the players have changed, the new speaker, which Matt Gaetz helped install, is working within a 2-seat margin right now, as thin as 217 to 215 because Trump has plucked 3 House members for his administration. And will eventually swing back to 5. It's still one of the narrowest House margins in the past century. That's not narrow as a criticism. It's not narrow as trying to spin or adjust how people did in the election. It's just a fact that if you have a narrow election and you don't win by a lot, then you don't have a lot of seats in your margin, which is a contrast to, say, other years where people are up by 20, 30 seats, and any number, a couple of defections won't make a big difference. So if you remember one thing from what's happening right now, remember this, because it's going to guide our politics for at least the next 2 years. While Trump keeps overselling his 1.5 point margin for the reason that he generally likes to inflate or exaggerate, and he wants to say he's got a big round of support, even though it's actually 1.5 points, the Republican coming out of the same election with a very similar narrow finish is not doing that, is not overselling it. The House Republican Speaker wants everyone to know up front, before they even take over next month, they have no votes to spare.
We have nothing to spare. But all of our members know that. We talked about that today, as we do constantly, that this is a team effort, that we've got to all row in the same direction.
Anyone rowing in a different direction, 2 or 3 people defecting, and they won't be able to squeeze in these agenda items, which, as I've just shown you, some of which might depart quite a ways from what we heard the voters in their vote, in their exit polls, in all our interviews, what the voters had on their minds, which is the cost of living, the prices, also immigration. We heard a lot about that, but not necessarily gutting Social Security and health care. We quoted a range of outlets, including the Washington Post, and now we turn to Washington Post senior news anchor Libby Casey. Welcome back.
Thanks so much, Harry.
What do you think first about the sort of clear political gap between what Trump is selling, hey, look how big he won, and what we just heard there from Johnson?
Yeah, I mean, that margin that you laid out is so thin. And you have to remember the last Congress that Speaker Johnson eventually inherited and led was, by any objective metric, very dysfunctional. And it only took a couple of members to topple Speaker McCarthy and create real chaos. Johnson had to rely on Democrats to help them out at times. And now we are facing a very different situation. The Senate will have a little more breathing room. But this is the challenge. When you win the House, the Senate, and the presidency, you can have really lofty goals and ambitions, but it is very hard to get everybody rowing in the same direction. There are big competing interests that are already starting to show.
Yeah. Let me play for you what Mike Johnson was saying here about his meeting with some of the big Trump players right now.
We want to take a blowtorch to the regulatory state. And I think what Elon and Vivek have in mind can help us in that regard. And so I invited them both to come to the Hill because we want to get everybody together that has that same mindset. We'll be inviting all the Senate and House Republicans together to a big sort of brainstorming session because we need to do that early in the process so we can formulate what the actual plans are.
What do you see as what Johnson is trying to navigate, what expectations he's managing, which I mentioned, and then the part of his caucus that wants tax cuts and Social Security cuts and all of that, again, with a backdrop where people have been promised something else out in the country?
Yeah, so Donald Trump has said he won't cut Social Security. We've heard that before from him. We're talking about Medicare and Medicaid. It's going to be hard to go to voters and say you're going to have to hit increased checks. You're going to have to do a work for increased SNAP benefits or, prove yourself when they're offering tax cuts for the wealthy. Some of this actually comes out of the playbook, Ari. You won't be surprised of Project 2025. They laid out in there trying to increase the work benefits, the work requirements for things like SNAP, food stamp benefits. Johnson and Thune, who will lead the Senate Republicans, and then Trump and his cabinet are going to have to figure out what they're going to prioritize. Now, Thune is saying he wants to hit energy, he wants to hit the border, and he wants to hit defense right away within like 30 days. I think 100 days is probably a more realistic timeline, but he's already getting pushback from members of his own caucus who say, well, wait, we want to hit taxes. We want to do something else. And when you look at the government, and we can talk about DOGE and the efforts to try to make more government efficiency, the big spenders are things that are very hard to touch. We're talking about those benefits that Americans receive. We're talking about the Pentagon. Some of the proposals I'm hearing are, it's a lot of money for me and you, like $1 million here and $1 million there, but it's small in terms of the government.
When you look at what they want to sell in these first 100 days, and there's been reporting here on the Senate side, they usually work a 3.5-day week. They might go to 5. They might go to the weekend. Part of that speaks to the calendar, that whatever you think about the election results, it's the unusual scenario of a one-term president who really has most pressure to get stuff done in those first 2 years. So does it matter which thing they lead on? Are they concerned about some of the headlines being different? Like if the first headlines are tax cuts for the billionaires, as I mentioned, which is clearly one of the priorities, and that's the first 100 days, not the other stuff, is that something they're concerned about? Or with the unusual leader of President-elect Trump, they're just going to go for it no matter what?
Boy, it's such a good question. I mean, I think they have to be concerned about the headlines because they have a goodwill momentum built up. Every new president comes in, even one that's been here before, has some energy and momentum, especially in the caucus. Now, we know that Republicans walk in lockstep with Donald Trump. Any of the pushback is happening behind closed doors, behind the scenes, and sort of these back channels. But even they will eventually crumble when they start looking at an election in 2 years' time that they have to face if they haven't been able to pass things that the American people approve of, or at least feel like Trump is following through on his promises and not breaking the promises to touch some of these safety net programs.
Yeah. Libby Casey on the big story here as we go beyond some of the transition picks and look at the governing agenda. Appreciate your guidance.
Thanks so much, Ari.
Thank you. President-elect Trump has quickly been naming people to the administration. 2 embattled nominees already withdrawing after scandals and signs they might fail Senate confirmation, the 2 you see there. Other jobs can be filled without a Senate vote. Today, Donald Trump tapped a convict for his White House, rehiring Peter Navarro as White House trade advisor. That's after Navarro served time for defying the January 6th probe. Navarro's made headlines for his efforts to help overthrow Trump's 2020 loss. You can see some of the headlines, both recent and past, from when I pressed him about that plot on this program. He admitted efforts to try to overthrow Trump's loss through the Congress, what he called a sweep. And these plots, you should remember, were initially underreported. They were not charged in those first few months after January 6th. But they formed this broader multi-pronged coup strategy, which was ultimately indicted by both state and federal prosecutors. Now, Navarro's answers supplied new evidence at the time. The January 6th committee subpoenaed him to testify only after that interview. He refused to testify. Congress ultimately recommended he be charged for that refusal, which led to his trial and conviction. And Trump rewarded that convicted defiance with a spot speaking at the GOP convention and now today's appointment.
The plan was simply this. We had over 100 congressmen and senators on Capitol Hill ready to implement the sweep.
Do you realize you are describing a coup?
No.
At the same time, he was refusing to comply with our subpoena. Mr. Navarro made multiple media appearances during which he discussed his various roles in the events that culminated in the January 6th attack. I'd like to play a video media clip right now.
I have so much knowledge to share with you about what I was involved in and what I know.
He has so much knowledge to share with a journalist, but he refuses to share that knowledge in response to a lawful subpoena.
They put me in handcuffs, they bring me here, they put me in leg irons, they stick me in a cell. If they can come for me, and if they can come for Donald Trump, be careful, they will come for you. I was convicted for simply refusing to testify before Congress. You implicated me in some kind of crime with Donald Trump. He's been loyal to me.
Donald Trump's been loyal to him, said Navarro, but loyal for what? Peter Navarro was blunt about exactly that exchange when we spoke to him after his time serving prison time. Trump has pardoned other aides who clashed with prosecutors rather than tell the truth under oath about just what they all did in government, what they did together. Navarro's appointment new today is the latest indication that Donald Trump will continue to take any actions he can, both through the power he has in hiring and perhaps the power he has in pardoning, to protect whatever secrets they have from the past and presumably whatever else they want to do in the future. That's an important story that is both about governing and whether the rule of law holds. We have former prosecutor Andrew Weissman here when we return in 90 seconds.
When it comes to my space, I got to keep things fresh and tidy, just like Mama taught me. So I'm always spraying Febreze fabric spray to freshen up and fight odors. Smells like home.
Smells like flowers to me, man.
Thank you, Zeke.
I have to find a babysitter.
I have a lot of questions.
When can they start?
Today? Now?
How about Saturday? Are they background checked?
My wife and I haven't been out in a year.
We need a date night. No offense.
Find all the care you need at care.com.
I've been warned by celebrities, athletes, and world leaders. But I've always felt most comfortable up here with the folks that made me who I am. I'm right at home, out here on the land. And I'm in my lane on the shoulder of the interstate. Because this is where I come from. I've been showing up here for nearly 200 years, and I can't wait to see what's next.
Hats off to the future.
Nothing runs like a deer.
The best moments deserve the best eggs, especially when they're Eggland's Best. It tastes so deliciously fresh, with better nutrition too. For us, it's eggs any style, as long as they're the best. Eggland's Best.
The remedy was for Vice President Pence, as the quarterback in the Green Bay sweep, to remand those votes back to the 6 battleground states.
Do you realize you are describing a coup?
No.
Peter Navarro now tapped by President-elect Trump to rejoin his White House after serving time in behind bars for a federal conviction over defying the January 6th probe and the subpoena that came after that interview. I'm joined by former FBI General Counsel and former Mueller prosecutor Andrew Weissman. Welcome back.
Nice to be here.
You see that history, and through the hiring and perhaps through future pardons, it seems to reward something that was always antithetical to law and order, which was defying a lawful subpoena and a probe.
So it's really worth remembering that the president-elect is a felon. He has been convicted of 34 felonies. These are just facts.
Yeah.
You can look at the first Trump presidency where he used the pardon power to pardon a series of criminals who were loyal to him, not just sort of general issues about pardon power abuse, but you can look at Manafort, Stone, other people who did not cooperate with the Mueller investigation. Basically, every defendant who we convicted, either at a trial or because they pled guilty, was pardoned. The people who cooperated were not pardoned. That is antithetical to law enforcement. So one shouldn't be surprised that for some of the nominees that you're seeing a recapitulation of exactly what we saw the first time, but with sort of shamelessness. That you have somebody like Peter Navarro, that you have Steve Bannon, other people who are either convicted or people who have been under investigation like Matt Gaetz, who are part of the clan for Donald Trump.
Here he was talking briefly on one of the programs, War Room, which is what Steve Bannon runs, and he was the other person who also took prison time for defying the probe, about personnel and policy and how they view all this. Take a look.
Personnel is policy. This goes back to Reagan. Bad personnel is not just bad policy, but it's bad politics. And one of the problems we had in that first term was just having a lot of deadwood in there who would slow down the Trump agenda because they thought they were better than they thought they got elected.
Yeah. These are people now coming back in. Bannon still is awaiting a New York trial, so he's essentially tied up in that sense, legally presumed innocent there, and we'll see what happens in that case.
Right.
But what does this do to the environment in the White House, where not only is there the history you just cited, but you have people around who, yes, you can say they've paid their debt to society. That's how the system works. But the entire attitude is anti-law, anti-law enforcement, anti-cooperation with these obligations, while they are, in some sense, part of the branch that is supposed to, as it says in their oath, take care that the laws be faithfully executed.
Well, I think big picture, you can look at some of the proposed nominees as really running on what Steve Bannon has sort of coined as burn it all down. They're not just people who are not qualified. They're people who are running and being proposed to run an agency, and they are antithetical to that agency itself. RFK Jr., primary example, with severe, real health risks to the entire country, if not the world, based on that nomination alone. That's just within healthcare. You can say the same thing, though, for the Justice Department. Kash Patel would be, in my view, a prime example of posing that kind of risk. You don't put people who have either are criminals or completely incompetent in charge of the national security and law enforcement apparatus of this country. And I'm going to borrow a comment from Tim Miller, which is, if this is what it takes for the country to sort of wake up, that's the road we might be on, where sort of the burn it all down makes people realize that, bureaucracies are flawed, but it's better to have some kind of functioning government than to live in complete chaos.
Right, and we're all going to cover and live through this and see what happens. I want to play one more moment from that original interview because he was quite stark about what they intended to do when they lost.
Have the battleground states challenge the results. That would trigger 24 hours of hearings. Mike Pence's job at that point was to take 10 days and go back and give the state legislatures, who really are the ones who have the power to determine whether an election is fraudulent, to give them a second look.
This was the government side of the coup and sort of creating reality, trying to commit voter elector fraud in other ways and then just claim power. I don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but how do you view this if those are now the people back in the White House with future elections?
Well, one of the things is what you had him say, and I mean, he volunteered it. It's his sort of like, you didn't force him to make these kinds of damning admissions, is the way that prosecutors make cases and the way they prove up something is by having people who are, especially people who used to be in government, tell the truth about what happened. So he's saying, I have all this information. He was unwilling to give it to Congress. That's an obligation that we all have, absent a lawful privilege. He did not have a lawful privilege. And now having somebody in the government having that view, which is that you just don't have to abide by the law, to me, it's of a piece with, as I said, the president-elect himself. I mean, you have to remember, he is a convicted felon. So the idea that we shouldn't be surprised that some of the proposed people have that same background.
Yeah. All clearly put. Andrew Weissman, our thanks to you. I'll tell folks who's coming up. Fran Lebowitz, and then Professor Melissa Murray also here. We'll be right back.
Asthma. Does it have you missing out on what you love, with who you love? Get back to better breathing with Fasenra, an add-on treatment for eosinophilic asthma taken once every 8 weeks. Fasenra is not for sudden breathing problems. Serious allergic reactions may occur. Get help for swelling of your face, mouth, tongue, or trouble breathing. Don't stop your asthma treatments without talking with your doctor. Tell your doctor if your asthma worsens or you have a parasitic infection. Headache and sore throat may occur. Ask your doctor if Fasenra is right for you.
Selling your home? Compare agents on Realtor.com. In a tap, get free proposals from local agents who truly know your area. Choose the one that's right for you and gets you the best value. Try it now, only at Realtor.com, the #1 site real estate professionals trust.
This is an important message for anyone and everyone with Medicare. If Medicare is important to you, then you need to hear this message because Medicare plans can change every year. And right now is the 2025 Medicare Annual Enrollment Period. That's right, the Medicare Annual Enrollment Period is now, but it ends December 7th. 2025 Medicare Advantage plans are now available. So now's the time for everyone on Medicare to call in to check up on their Medicare plan and benefits. Call now for your free 2025 Medicare coverage checkup. We can see if there are changes to your plan in the coming year or if there is a 2025 Medicare Advantage plan available in your area with additional benefits. Did you know that Medicare Advantage plans can change each and every year? Call now and a licensed insurance agent can look up your plan and see if there are any changes in your current plan in the upcoming year. The call and Medicare checkup are free.
I'm on Medicare. Should I call?
Yes, now is the best time for everyone on Medicare to call for your free 2025 Medicare coverage checkup.
Why should I call?
We can look up your plan and see if there's a Medicare Advantage plan available in your area with additional benefits. You don't get a plan with additional benefits automatically. Call now before the Medicare Annual Enrollment Period ends December 7th. If you're on Medicare, now's the time to call. 2025 Medicare Advantage plans are now available, so everyone on Medicare can call to see if a Medicare Advantage plan may be better for you and if there are any changes to your current Medicare plan in the coming year. It's your free Medicare coverage checkup at absolutely no cost to you. Just call the number on your screen and speak with a licensed insurance agent who can check up on your plan and answer your questions. Anyone with Medicare can call. The call and 2025 Medicare coverage checkup are free with no obligation. You can call now even if you called before, and the call is free.
Just call 800-364-1630. 800-364-1630.
What's up? You seem kind of sluggish today.
Things aren't really moving.
You could use some Metamucil.
Metamucil psyllium fiber helps keep your digestive system moving so you can feel lighter and more energetic. Metamucil keeps you moving. And try Fizzing Fiber Plus vitamins.
You woke up with a sore throat and a low-grade fever. You know you are getting sick, so here's your choices. You can get sicker and miss work. Try to see a doctor this week or sit hours in a crowded waiting room at urgent care.
I have a smarter option for you. Open your medical emergency kit. Match your symptoms to doctor-recommended prescription in your booklet and take the right meds now and get well faster.
This is not a first aid kit. It's like having an urgent care in your home. It includes doctor-prescribed medications to treat over 39 medical issues like respiratory infections, strep throat, pneumonia, UTIs, and more.
No waiting to see the doctor and no standing in line at the pharmacy. It's right here.
Every home should have at least one medical emergency kit, and here's how to order.
The Black Friday sale is on with the lowest price of the year. Order online in minutes and your kit that treats common and life-saving medicines is rushed to your door. Don't miss Black Friday savings. Visit urgentcarekit.com/Black Friday. That's urgentcarekit.com/Black Friday.
Multiple outlets are now reporting that Trump may have to back down and take another loss in his cabinet picks, this time for the Pentagon, where Pete Hegseth could be swapped out amidst scandals for Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. Now, Hegseth was on Capitol Hill today. Take a look.
I spoke to the president-elect this morning. He said, keep going, keep fighting. Find you all the way.
So you're in this all the way.
Why would I back down?
Do you think you're being Kavanaugh'd right now?
I had a member not 45 minutes ago look me in the eye in private, just he and I, and say, that's what they're trying to do to you. Kavanaugh stood up and he fought and he won. It is the classic art of the smear. Take whatever tiny kernels of truth, and there are tiny, tiny ones in there, and blow them up into a masquerade of a narrative.
Hegseth has been clearly pushing back on this. You can see that in the Megyn Kelly interview. As for Governor DeSantis, he was on Fox, where Hegseth has worked, and seemed to, remember, he and Trump started out as allies, DeSantis first building his political appeal on Trumpism and MAGA, but then, of course, they were rivals in the race for the nomination. But now he seems to be back to auditioning for sort of the Trump mood.
You do owe the president a great deal of deference on his picks. I think Donald Trump in this pick and others, he's making sure he's getting people who have the proper posture to these institutions. These are not the revered institutions that they may have been 30 years ago. These are very problematic institutions.
That is, of course, right out of the current MAGA playbook, that however controversial any of these people are, it is argued that because they are so radical or unusual, that's somehow a good thing to deal with the so-called deep state. That is maybe DeSantis's level of brainstorming and trying to add logic to what has been, by its own process, a troubled cabinet selection, because two people are already out. He would be potentially the third if Hegseth drops from the Pentagon. All of this a long ways from what I mentioned, their days running against each other.
He said he was going to build a wall and have Mexico pay for it. He did not deliver that.
Ron DeSantis, did anyone ever hear of DeSantis, the sanctimonious?
He said he was going to drain the swamp. He did not deliver that.
The problem with Ron DeSanctimonious is that he needs a personality transplant.
He said he was going to eliminate the debt, and he added $7.8 trillion to the debt.
That is how they sounded recently when competing. Of course, DeSantis did endorse Donald Trump and has been pretty loyal to him through the general election process. Whether they actually become teammates in the cabinet remains to be seen, and may turn on whether Hegseth, the Pentagon pick, continues to run into these problems and accounts of his past conduct. Now, coming up tonight, as mentioned, we have Fran Lebowitz, but first, the Supreme Court hearing big arguments today. We have Professor Murray on those next.
Amazing. Jerry, you gotta see this.
Saying it. Trust me, after 15 walks, it's a little old.
Stop waiting. Start investing. E-Trade from Morgan Stanley.
A storm's coming. And not one of this earth, but one of my own making.
It's Jamie. I would feel it in my heart if his had stopped. Mine would stop too. Home is where the heart is. it's also the place where it can be broken.
Hi, I'm Damian Clark. I'm here to help you understand how to get the most from Medicare. If you're eligible for Medicare, it's a good idea to have Original Medicare. It gives you coverage for doctor office visits and hospital stays. But if you want even more benefits, you can choose a Medicare Advantage plan, like the ones offered at Humana. Our plans combine Original Medicare with extra benefits in a single convenient plan with $0 or low monthly plan premiums. These plans could even include prescription drug coverage with $0 copays on hundreds of prescriptions. Plus, there's a cap on your out-of-pocket costs. Most plans include dental, vision, even hearing coverage. There are $0 copays for in-network preventive services and much more. Get the most from Medicare with a Humana Medicare Advantage plan. Call today to learn more. Remember, annual enrollment for Medicare Advantage plans ends December 7th. Humana, a more human way to healthcare.
An alternative to pills, Voltaren is a clinically proven arthritis pain relief gel which penetrates deep to target the source of pain with non-steroidal anti-inflammatory medicine directly at the source. Voltaren, the joy of movement.
Over 600,000 USPS employees working in sync to ensure everything sent on its holiday ride ends with a moment of joy.
Your parents have given you some amazing gifts, but what about the inherited ones? Celebrate them with Ancestry DNA, the simple test that shows your deep family roots from your mom's side and your dad's side, with some serious detail. Trace the journeys and history that shaped who you are today, and see the traits they passed down. Your connections to the past are all waiting. See just how gifted you are for only $39.
Memory and thinking issues keep piling up? It may seem like normal aging, but could be due to a buildup of amyloid plaques in the brain. The sooner you talk to your doctor, the more options you may have. Learn more at amyloid.com.
Hey, grab more delectables. You know, that lickable cat treat.
Delickable delectables.
Yes, just hurry.
Must be delicious.
Delectables, lickable treat.
Deliciously delickable delectables.
I still love to surf, snowboard, and of course skate. So I take Cunol Magnesium to support my muscle and bone health. Cunol's high absorption magnesium glycinate helps me get the full benefits of magnesium. Cunol, the brand I trust.
I finally got the Viral Bra from Honeylove.
It is crazy that you can get this much support from a bra that has absolutely zero underwire. It's totally invisible, even under the tightest tops.
I finally found an underwire-free bra that's actually comfortable. No back fat, no spillage, and doesn't cut into me.
It doesn't stretch, doesn't sag. The quality is phenomenal.
Honeylove has a 30-day money-back guarantee.
Shop our sale now at honeylove.com.
Guys, reach peak performance through Ro. With access to prescription medications uniquely designed to suit your needs. We got you. Connect with a provider at ro.co/peak.
I have to find a babysitter.
I have a lot of questions.
When can they start? Today? Now? How about Saturday? Are they background checked?
My wife and I haven't been out in a year.
We need a date night. No offense.
Find all the care you need at care.com.
There are many debates about transgender policy and rights in America. The Trump campaign hammered a message against, quote, they, them, in TV ads in their closing argument. Some of the debates can collapse into sort of vague statements, sometimes bad faith attacks, or people just perhaps genuinely talking past each other about bathrooms and sports teams and buzzwords and big confusing arguments over gender as a concept or freedom, or what it should really entail. Then there's still the reality that grinds on in the country. And some of this involves people's lives and politics that you can't really avoid because the politicians are doing things. It was just last year when Tennessee Republicans passed a law which was widely seen as a deliberate rebuke to the transgender movement, where they used their power to make it illegal for doctors and patients to provide health care, I should say doctors and parents, to provide health care to transgender minor patients. Activists challenged that in court. Tennessee stated that their ban was designed to help to protect minors from what they called risky, unproven medical interventions in the still developing field of transgender healthcare. A federal judge, though, halted that ban, and then an appeals court reinstated the ban, so it's back in effect. So this isn't something where it's easy for the government or society to just say hands off because, well, the politicians are going hands-on and banning doctors from acting. Some courts found that to be something they had to stop, and other courts reinstated it. And that's how you get to the Supreme Court today, which basically is saying this is something they can't avoid, that they had to hear this case. And it is actually the first big trans healthcare case to hit the high court. You could see people gathering on both sides of the issue outside the court today. The Biden Justice Department basically attacked that Republican law from Tennessee as overly sweeping, a kind of categorical ban, which overrides the views of parents, patients, doctors. Now, the oral argument today had questions that suggested a kind of a split. Conservatives more receptive to the arguments that, look, there are going to be costs no matter what, that these new medical interventions are, by their very nature, more novel, less tested. And then the Democratic appointees really asked questions that suggested they view the case as really something we've seen many times throughout history, which is even when something is new or, quote, controversial, at the end of the day, their question suggested it comes back to people's rights.
The evidence is very clear that there are some children who actually need this treatment.
The judgment at the present time of the health authorities in the United Kingdom and Sweden is that the risks and dangers greatly outweigh the benefits.
They sound in the same kinds of arguments that were made back in the day, 50s, 60s, with respect to racial classifications.
Some people are going to be harmed. And then the question becomes, how does the court choose which group?
I'm wondering whether what's really going on here is discrimination against, a disregard for young people who are trans.
This is where the reality hits. Because these debates, you've probably heard about them, they're discussed in politics, they're discussed in communities where different younger generations are figuring out their lives, and there's a robust debate about that. And then you have the fact that there is no way to just be neutral on a moving train, as the saying goes. The court has to decide which side here has the better argument about rights and health care and the admittedly difficult area of what the state will sanction when it comes to children. We're joined by NYU law professor Melissa Murray to help us make sense of what the court heard today. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Let's start, before we get to the oral arguments, with how you would explain the standoff in this case over this state law.
Yeah, it's a great question, Ari, and I think you had a really good primer on it. At the heart of this really is, what is the role of an unelected court in a constitutional democracy? And you had the three liberals saying that the court's role is to be deferential to legislatures in some cases, but not where it involves people's rights, the rights of minority groups, fundamental rights. Those are opportune places for the court to intervene. And then you had the five conservatives. One conservative remained stubbornly silent, and he is the really important voice in all of this. But the five conservatives seem to say that this is an area of shifting medical inquiry where we don't have a lot of information. People are changing their minds. Those are precisely the kinds of circumstances that are tailor-made for legislative rather than judicial judgment. So at bottom, this is really a fight over what the court is and what the court should be in our system.
And as I mentioned, the Supreme Court probably felt that it had to take this, given the standoff in the lower courts, because doing nothing would be to leave it in place. Doing something, hearing the case, has them then making that call. And so the area of children is more difficult because while parents traditionally exercise the key authority over whatever type of health care, and you can have debates about Christian Scientists and whether to go to the hospital at all, these are situations where the children, especially as they get up in age, minors, and they're in the teenage years, may say that they think this is the right choice for them, and the state is basically in the position of saying that's not allowed, which echoes in a way some of what we've seen in the area of choice and abortion.
No, that's certainly the case here. The state obviously has a role to play in protecting the welfare of children. Parents often have a strong role to play here that the court has recognized since the 1920s, a right to direct their children's upbringing in the manner of their choosing, including making medical decisions. But it's really important to note here that that question of parental rights is not on the table before this court. It was made below in the Sixth Circuit. But when the Biden administration intervened here, it asked only to review a single question, whether this law, Tennessee's SB 1, discriminated on the basis of sex. And the court chose to accept the administration's petition for review, not the parents' petition. So this larger question of whether parents do have this right and whether it supersedes the state, that's still out in the open. We're only focused on whether this law discriminates unconstitutionally on the basis of sex.
And we view that probably as a legal strategy, that they think that by narrowing it to that with the sex discrimination point, which is supported in the sort of the evidence below, that they might find that as a better sort of line of attack of the state law. I'll let you respond if you want to that, as well as what I want to play you, which was a little bit of how Justice Sotomayor was questioning today.
When you're 1% of the population or less, very hard to see how the democratic process is going to protect you. Blacks were a much larger part of the population, and it didn't protect them. It didn't protect women for whole centuries.
Professor.
So to the first question about why they chose only to take this very narrow question, I think the government pushed this simply because it's kind of a very clean way to get into this without getting into all of the due process fundamental rights questions that have already, I think, been unsettled by the Dobbs decision on abortion 2 years ago. What Justice Sotomayor is asking in that colloquy is a kind of broader question. In our system, there are certain categories, race, for example, gender, for example, that are subject to heightened review by the courts. When the state discriminates on the basis of race or gender, the courts are obliged to look at those laws more closely. And one of the arguments made here, a secondary argument, was whether or not transgender identity should be one of those kinds of categories that gets more searching review from the court. And what Justice Sotomayor here was saying was the reason we allow for more searching review, greater judicial intervention in those circumstances is often those groups aren't in a position to protect themselves in the democratic process because their numbers are too few or they are politically powerless. And so she was, again, pointing to the numbers of transgender persons, but also noting that that is and historically has been seen as a perfect opportunity for more solicitous court review because of the need to protect those groups from the political process and majoritarian rule.
Yeah, and so when you really get into the medical area, the public debates, and sort of also having to drain out some of the politics and the hype, and then what you reminded us, which is how specific this particular review is, you see that it's certainly a little more nuanced than some of the big screaming debates, but very interesting to listen to our arguments. Definitely new ground the court's going to break either way, so we'll keep an eye on that. Professor Murray, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. It is the holiday season. There are a lot of different things going on, and we are happy to tell you that we're going to hear from Fran Lebowitz, making sense during tough times, next.
I've been warned by celebrities, athletes, and world leaders. But I've always felt most comfortable up here with the folks that made me who I am. I'm right at home, out here on the land. And I'm in my lane on the shoulder of the interstate. Because this is where I come from. I've been showing up here for nearly 200 years, and I can't wait to see what's next.
Hats off to the future.
Nothing runs like a deer.
Sarah, at a shh. كتير رعب وطبعا هلا يعني أنا بحس بالرعب الكبير بدنا بس نعيش بأمان.
Conflict is raging across the world, and millions of children's lives are being devastated by war, hunger, disease, and poverty. We urgently need your help to reach children in crisis. Please call or go online to give just $10 a month, only 33 cents a day. We need 1,000 new monthly donors this month to help children in crisis around the world and right here at home. You can help us provide food, essentials, and life-saving medical care to children in the most need.
حريتنا يعني بدنا نعيش زي كل الأطفال بدنا نعيش بحرية وأمان.
In the darkest times, children suffer the most. You can help by calling right now and giving just $10 a month. All we need are 1,000 monthly donors. Please call or go online now with your monthly gift of just $10. Thanks to generous government grants, every dollar you give can have up to 10 times the impact. And when you call with your credit card, we will send you this Save the Children tote bag as a thank you for your support.
وعيت على هاي الدنيا القصف والنزوح والخيمة. أتمنى نعاود على بلادنا. شايف لك إنه هذا مستحيل.
Your small monthly donation of just $10 could be the reason a child in crisis survives. Show them they're not alone. Please call or go online to givetosave.org to help save lives.
Do you have high blood pressure? If so, you're at greater risk of developing AFib, one of the leading causes of stroke. Detect AFib with KardiaMobile, the world's most clinically validated personal EKG. With KardiaMobile, you can take a medical-grade EKG in just 30 seconds from anywhere, and it's proven to detect 3 of the most common arrhythmias.
Yeah, before I had Kardia, I didn't know what my heart was doing, and now I do. It gives me great peace of mind.
It's in my pocket all the time. It goes where I go. I never am away from it.
It's like a virtual cardiologist. You can pull out the device, check your heart rhythm, and instantly know whether or not you're in atrial fibrillation.
To have that device so handy and be able to use it immediately, that's just very comforting to know.
Get KardiaMobile today for just $79 and check out our holiday offers for you or a loved one at Kardia.com or Amazon. Don't wait, these offers won't last.
Red Lobsters across the nation got a new menu celebration. Look, we got lobster, pasta, crab, bacon, shrimp for the taking. 500 locations, 7 new creations. Come taste it.
Hey, grab more delectables. You know, that lickable cat treat.
Delickable delectables.
Yes. Just hurry.
Must be delicious.
Delectables, lickable treat. Deliciously delickable delectables.
Your business needs to hire someone now. So, in addition to managing your business, you have to go through hundreds of resumes and hope for the best. Or you can go and get the best. Introducing Paychex Recruiting Copilot. It uses AI to help find potential candidates from millions of profiles, whether they're looking for a job or not. Then, it helps you get in touch and get them hired. 5 times faster than job postings. Get your own Paychex Recruiting Copilot now at paychex.com/TV.
You're wrong. It must be a...
Writer Fran Lebowitz is known for her wit, independence, and realism. Tonight we get to hear from her on The Beat in a discussion ranging from generational change to technology. Take a look. At multiple points with regard to technology and the way they're living and how they define friends, younger people, you sound far more open-minded to the prospect that the evolution that they're going through could lead to better or worse. We just don't know. But it is not rational to do what some people in the older generation do, which is to assume it's worse. How did you come to that view? Is that specific to technology or just the whole stampede of what's coming?
I came to that view because it's true. You know, I mean, everybody, in a certain way, people tend to think the world began when they were born, you know, and it ends when they end. You know, I am aware that that is not the case, you know. So when people say, you know, I mean, how can, you know, kids think that someone they never met is their friend, you know, from the very beginning, I would say that's their idea of a friend. That's not your idea of a friend, but that's their idea of a friend. I never felt that, first of all, my generation, you know, I have never felt, you know, that this is a generation that's going to stand out gleaming in history. I mean, when you, I mean, my parents' generation was this fantastic generation. In other words, I always tell people, because I know a lot of kids, you know, and he'll say, I don't know, I'm only 35, and I always say, when a guy says this to me, by the time my father was 25, not 35, he had fought and won World War II. He had gotten married, he had a child, and he had a business. So don't tell me you're only 35. So were these people different people? In other words, different beings? You know, it's almost as if they made this world, you know, at great sacrifice in lots of ways, then gave it to us. And when I say us, I mean the other people in my generation, not me. And then we trashed it. You know, and then people who have children gave them this trashed world. You know, so that it's now up to them. You know, by the time, you know, I don't know if they're going to fix it or not, you know, but they can't make it much worse.
What areas do you see them having progress so far?
One big difference is how much better it is to be a girl than when I was a girl. There's no comparison, just none at all, you know, and the boys are better. And that's one of the reasons it's better to be a girl. I mean, certainly when I was a child, I knew the people who weren't interested in what I had to say. And those people were all the people in charge of me, my parents, my teachers, you know. But once I left the, you know, the realm of their power, my contemporaries, even if they were 5 years old or 6 years old, they weren't interested. So I just disregarded the people above me.
Plenty to learn there from Fran Lebowitz. That's part of our Summit series, where we talk to people at the summits of their field, which is why we wanted to share some of her wisdom with you right now. And here's what we've heard from others.
Being judgmental, to me, just means I have standards.
Well, let's just go through it. They scream, "Brace for impact."
This is a real Dr. Jane Goodall Barbie.
A Barbie doll that encourages little girls to think that I can do that.
Reaching the summit means
trying harder every day.
Peace and fulfillment. I feel like I'm in the foothills.
You have done something positive with the power that the summit has given you.
That I haven't got there yet, I hope.
Some inspiration and humility. It's msnbc.com/summit. The Fran Lebowitz interview you saw a clip of there. We actually went 45 minutes with her, so you can see all the rest of that, Jane Goodall and others. If you're interested, we'll be right back.
For more than a decade, Farxiga has been trusted again and again and again.
Farxiga.
Ask your doctor about Farxiga.
Your record label is taking off, but so is your sound engineer. You need to hire.
I need Indeed.
Indeed you do. Our advanced matching helps find talented candidates so you can connect with them fast. Visit Indeed.com/hire.
This is an important message for everyone on Medicare. Right now is the Medicare annual enrollment period, and today we are talking about Medicare Part C, commonly called Medicare Advantage. If you don't have a Medicare Part C plan, call now. You may be eligible for plans in your zip code with additional benefits or cost savings you may not be receiving now or that may have previously not been available to you. Different Part C plans are available in different parts of the country, so don't wait. Call the number on your screen now. If you're on Medicare, you can call even if you called last year. We will check to see if there is a Part C plan available in your area with additional benefits or cost savings. Call to speak with a licensed insurance agent before the end of the annual enrollment period. You don't get Medicare Part C benefits automatically, so call now for your free 2025 no-obligation Medicare benefits review.
Just call 800-364-1630. 800-364-1630.
This is an important message for everyone on Medicare. Right now is the Medicare annual enrollment period, and today we are talking about Medicare Part C, commonly called Medicare Advantage. If you don't have a Medicare Part C plan, call now. You may be eligible for plans in your zip code with additional benefits or cost savings you may not be receiving now or that may have previously not been available to you. Different Part C plans are available in different parts of the country, so don't wait. Call the number on your screen now. If you're on Medicare, you can call even if you called last year. We will check to see if there is a Part C plan available in your area with additional benefits or cost savings. Call to speak with a licensed insurance agent before the end of the annual enrollment period. You don't get Medicare Part C benefits automatically, so call now for your free 2025 no-obligation Medicare benefits review.
Just call 800-364-1630. 800-364-1630.
The government thought that showing the world separations, they would scare people that were attempting to come from coming.
It troubles me profoundly that it could happen again.
Stay informed on the biggest issues of the day. MSNBC has you covered wherever you are. Watch, read, and listen. For the in-depth coverage and analysis you need, stay with MSNBC.
I have a structured settlement and I need cash now. Call J.G. Wentworth, 877 cash now.
I have an annuity, but I need cash now.
Call J.G. Wentworth, 877 cash now.
It's your money. Use it when you need it.
Call J.G. Wentworth, 877 cash now.
This is my coffee shop. We just moved into a bigger space, brought on another employee, and ordered new branded gear for the team. It was so easy. I just chose my products, added our logo, and placed my order. Bring your own team together with custom gear. Get started today at customink.com.
The Cabinets to Go Buy More, Save More sale is going on now.
Hurry in for your free 3D design. Save up to 40%. And start enjoying your new dream kitchen for just $139 per month.
Get more wow for less at Cabinets to Go.
Thanks for spending some time with us here on The Beat. You can always find me online at Ari Melber across social. If you use any of those, or go to arimelber.com. You can put in your email address to keep in touch with me directly, read my newsletter, and all that good stuff. Thanks for, again, spending time with us. If you're not on the internet, just, come back tomorrow at 6 p.m. Eastern. We're done tonight, but we'll keep up with you. The Readout with Joy Reid starts now.
Tonight on The Readout.
We really believe that he is not that man he was 7 years ago. Let's go back 7 years, which if we all went back 7 years, we would see that maybe we were not the people we are today. I mean, and that was 7 years ago. He's redeemed, forgiven, changed. I think we all are after 7 years. Get to know him, not the Pete from 7 years ago.
How many years are we talking about, ma'am? Who is the same person they were way back in 2018? But as Pete Hegseth and his mom keep up their PR campaign, Trump continues to fill his administration with billionaires, celebrities, and loyalists. Also tonight, if Putin's happy, Trump's happy. And Trump's cabinet choices have made Vladimir Putin very, very happy. Plus, the conservative Supreme Court justices echo right-wing talking points in a major trans rights case, with little doubt as to how that decision will go. But we begin tonight with The Apprentice, White House edition. Now, people who watched the show The Apprentice and became enamored by Donald Trump because of it just assumed that he was the one in charge. But that is not actually how it worked. The professionals, producers behind the scenes, called the shots. And Trump had just one job: to strut into that conference room set built by the Apprentice team in Trump Tower and say this.
Tammy, you got in the way of your team, and your disloyalty has been just terrible, and you sort of understood that.
Throughout, really, or just this one particular task?
Let's say it doesn't matter. I mean, it is so obnoxious in this particular case.